Hey everyone, tonight we're exploring the gentle paradox of Tenochtitlan's water engineering, how the Aztecs built their greatest city not despite the water, but because of it. Before we settle in, take a moment to like this if you enjoy these deep historical explorations, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I always find it fascinating how our global community gathers to explore these complex questions together. Now get comfortable, dim those lights. Tonight we're not chasing dramatic conquests or heroic tales. Instead, we're going to examine something much quieter but equally remarkable, the sophisticated dance between water and civilization that created one of history's most innovative urban centers. Let's begin our gentle journey into the floating world of Lake Texcoco. Picture, if you will, the soft morning light breaking across a vast expanse of Lake Texcoco in the Valley of Mexico, circa 1400 CE. The water stretches endlessly in all directions, its surface broken only by the gentle movement of reed boats gliding silently between floating gardens. This is where the Mexica people chose to build their Tonon island surrounded by the lake's embrace, creating a city that would become the heart of an empire. Tonight, we'll explore how Tenochtitlan's engineers solved the fundamental challenge of urban life on water, how to manage both abundance and scarcity, how to create fresh water in a saline environment, and how to transform hydraulic necessity into economic opportunity. We'll discover the quiet revolution of China PAMs, those fed 250,000 people, and trace the intricate networks of canals that connected this iconic metropolis to trade routes spanning all of Mesoamerica. This is a story of patient adaptation, of working with water's natural rhythms rather than against them, and of how the gentle lapping of lake waters against stone foundations became the soundtrack to one of history's most sophisticated civilizations. In the gentle pre-dawn hours of the Valley of Mexico, when morning mist still clung to the surface of Lake Texcoco like a gossamer veil, the ancient waters would begin their daily dialogue with the stone foundations of Tenochtitlan. The lake stretched vast and serene, its surface broken only by the quiet passage of early fishermen in their dugout canoes, their paddles creating barely perceptible ripples that caught the first golden light of sunrise. This was the hydraulic heart of one of the world's most sophisticated water civilizations, where the Mexica people had learned to read the subtle language of seasonal floods and gentle recessions with the patience of centuries. The natural hydrology of Lake Texcoco presented both blessing and profound to those who would call its waters home. During the rainy season, from May through October, the lake would swell with the accumulated runoff from the surrounding mountains, its waters rising with predictable yet potentially destructive force. The Mexica understood these rhythms intimately, observing how the lake's 5 interconnected basins would fill and drain according to patterns as reliable as the movement of stars. Lake Texcoco itself occupied the lowest point of this aquatic system, naturally receiving the waters of Lakes Ex Alto, Canons and Pungo to the north, while the southern lakes of Zucasmel and Chalco contributed their fresher waters through a complex network of natural channels and marshlands. What made Lake Texcoco particularly challenging was its saline nature, a characteristic that distinguished it from its freshwater neighbors and created unique opportunities for those who could master its contradictions. The lake's high salt content, concentrated through millennia of evaporation and mineral accumulation, meant that while it provided abundant water, it could not directly sustain the agricultural needs of a growing population. This fundamental paradox would shape every aspect of Mexica hydraulic engineering, forcing them to develop innovative solutions that worked with rather than against the lake's natural chemistry. The Mexica approach to water management reflected a philosophical understanding that would influence their engineering choices for generations. Rather than viewing the lake as an obstacle to be conquered, they perceived it as a living entity with its own rhythms and requirements. one that could be persuaded through patient observation and careful intervention to support human habitation. This perspective manifested in their gradual, adaptive construction methods, where each new hydraulic innovations have accumulated knowledge about water behavior, seasonal patterns, and the delicate balance between human needs and natural systems. Archaeological evidence suggests that the early Mexica settlers, arriving in the Valley of Mexico during the 13th century, initially established themselves on the marshy edges of the lake system, learning through daily interaction how water levels fluctuated with seasonal rains and dry periods. These early communities developed an intimate understanding of the lake's moods, recognizing the subtle signs that preceded seasonal changes in the microenvironments that could be cultivated even in this challenging aquatic landscape. The decision to establish their permanent settlement on an island in Lake Texcoco, according to their founding mythology, represented not just spiritual significance, but practical wisdom about the defensive and economic advantages of an aquatic location. The construction of the Great Dike System, beginning in earnest during the 1442s under the direction of Texcoco's ruler Tenochtitlan, represented the culmination of generations of hydraulic experimentation and observation. This massive earthwork and stone barrier, stretching nearly 10 miles across the lake, embodied the Mexica understanding that successful water management required large-scale, coordinated intervention that could redirect natural forces without destroying the fundamental systems that sustained life. The dike's primary function was to separate the saline waters of Lake Texcoco from the fresher waters of the southern lakes, creating a controlled environment where both agricultural and urban development could flourish. The engineering principles underlying this massive construction project reveal sophisticated understanding of water pressure, flow dynamics, and the long-term stability requirements of hydraulic infrastructure. The dike was not simply a wall, but a complex system of barriers, channels, and control mechanisms that could be adjusted according to seasonal needs and changing water levels. During periods of high water, carefully designed openings could be opened to allow excess water to flow between lake sections, preventing dangerous flooding while maintaining the delicate balance between salt and fresh water that made urban agriculture possible. The morning mist rises gently from the dark waters of Lake Texcoco, revealing one of humanity's most ingenious agricultural innovations slowly emerging from the dawn shadows. The China palms, those remarkable floating gardens that Spanish chroniclers would later describe with wonder and disbelief, represent a profound understanding of the delicate relationship between water, soil, and sustenance. These artificial islands, constructed with patient precision over generations, transformed the lake's shallow margins into a verdance that would sustain one of the world's great urban civilizations. The creation of a China MP began not with grand proclamations or dramatic earthworks, but with the quiet, methodical gathering of aquatic vegetation from the lake's abundant marshlands. Skilled farmers would wade into the shallow waters during the dry season, their movements creating gentle ripples that barely disturbed the surface calm. They collected water hyacinth, cattles, and other marsh plants, weaving them together into long, flexible mats that would form the foundation of their floating gardens. This process required an intimate knowledge of aquatic ecology, understanding which plants would decompose at the proper rate to provide nutrients while maintaining structural integrity. Layer upon layer of vegetation was carefully arranged, creating a foundation typically measuring between 15 and 30 meters in length and perhaps 2 to 3 meters in width. The dimensions were not arbitrary, but reflected generations of accumulated wisdom about optimal growing conditions and manageable maintenance requirements. Each layer was deliberately compressed and allowed to settle, the farmers understanding that patience in construction would yield decades of productive cultivation. The gentle decomposition of lower vegetation layers created a rich, dark soil that would prove extraordinarily fertile, while the living root systems of marsh plants provided structural stability but could withstand seasonal water level fluctuations. The transformation of these vegetative foundations into productive agricultural plots required sophisticated understanding of soil chemistry and plant nutrition. Farmers would carefully apply layers of lake mud, rich in organic matter and minerals, creating growing medium that modern agricultural scientists recognize as remarkably well-balanced. The mud was not simply scooped and dumped, but was carefully selected from specific areas of the lake bottom where centuries of sediment accumulation had created optimal nutrient profiles. This process of soil preparation often took months, with farmers testing different combinations of organic matter and monitoring how various plants responded to different soil compositions. The planting cycles on China palms followed rhythms that harmonized human agricultural needs with natural seasonal patterns. Farmers developed sophisticated crop rotation systems that maximized soil fertility while providing continuous harvests throughout the year. Maize, beans, and squash formed the foundation of China MPA agriculture, but the gardens also produced tomatoes, chili peppers, flowers, and medicinal herbs. The diversity of crops reflected not only nutritional needs, but also the complex market demands of Tenochtitlan's growing urban population. Flowers, particularly marigolds and other ceremonial blooms, commanded premium prices in the city's markets, while medicinal plants served both local healers and distant trade networks. The maintenance of China palms required daily attention and seasonal intensive labor that created distinctive rhythms of community life. Farmers would begin their work before dawn, poling their canoes through narrow channels between the floating gardens as the morning mist still clung to the water's surface. The gentle splash of irrigation water being distributed through carved wooden channels provided a constant, soothing soundtrack to agricultural work. Weeding, harvesting, and soil management were conducted with tools specifically designed for aquatic agriculture, including specialized hose and planting sticks that could work effectively in the moist, rich soil of the floating gardens. The integration of aquaculture with agriculture created a remarkably efficient and sustainable food production system. Fish, ducks, and other aquatic creatures lived in the channels between China palms, their waste providing additional nutrients for the crops, while the garden's root systems helped filter and purify the water. This symbiotic relationship demonstrated sophisticated understanding of ecological principles that modern sustainable agriculture is only beginning to rediscover. The fish not only provided protein for local consumption, but also served as natural pest control, consuming insects and larvae that might otherwise damage crops. Water management on the China palms required constant attention and innovative solutions to challenges that varied with seasonal changes and long-term environmental fluctuations. During periods of high water, farmers constructed temporary dikes and drainage channels to prevent their gardens from becoming waterlogged. In dry seasons, they developed efficient irrigation systems that conserved precious freshwater while maintaining optimal growing conditions. The knowledge required for this water management was passed down through generations of farming families, creating a sophisticated body of traditional ecological knowledge that enabled sustainable intensive agriculture in an aquatic environment. The social organizations surrounding China MP agriculture reflected the complex labor requirements and specialized knowledge necessary for successful aquatic farming. Extended families often work together to maintain multiple floating gardens, with different family members specializing in particular aspects of the agricultural cycle. Elder farmers possessed invaluable knowledge about weather patterns, soil management, and crop selection, while younger family members provided the physical labor required for construction and maintenance. This intergenerational knowledge transfer ensured the continuity of sophisticated agricultural techniques while allowing for gradual innovation and adaptation to changing conditions. The economic impact of China MPA agriculture extended far beyond simple food production. creating the agricultural surplus that enabled Tenochtitlan's transformation from island settlement to imperial capital. The floating gardens could produce multiple harvests per year, generating food surpluses that supported not only farmers, but also the growing population of craftsmen, merchants, priests, and administrators who made urban civilization possible. The reliability of China MP agriculture provided economic security that allowed for specialization and trade, while the garden's proximity to urban markets reduced transportation costs and enabled the development of sophisticated commercial networks that would eventually span Mesoamerica. The massive earthwork that would become known as the Great Dyke of Ingenuity emerged from the lake waters like a gentle giant, its construction representing one of the most remarkable feats of hydraulic engineering in the pre-Columbian Americas. This monumental barrier, stretching nearly 10 miles across the southern portion of Lake Texcoco, arose not from conquest or domination of nature, but from a profound understanding of water's dual character as both life-giver and potential destroyer. The engineering principles underlying this massive undertaking revealed a sophisticated grasp of hydrostatic pressure and flow dynamics that would have impressed contemporary European engineers. The Mexica builders understood that water, like all natural forces, possessed its own rhythms and preferences, and their dike worked with these patterns rather than against them. The structure rose gradually from the lake bottom, its foundation stones carefully selected and placed to create a stable base that could withstand the gentle but persistent pressure of millions of gallons of water. Construction began in the 1442s under the direction of Tenochtitlan, the philosopher king of Texcoco, whose name would forever be associated with this triumph of patient engineering. The project required the coordination of thousands of workers from dozens of communities around the lake, each contributing their specialized knowledge of local water conditions and stone working techniques. The morning mist would rise from the lake surface as workers moved in quiet coordination, their movements as rhythmic and purposeful as the water they sought to channel. The dike served a dual function that exemplified the Aztec understanding of engineering as harmony rather than conquest. Its primary purpose was flood control, protecting the growing city of Tenochtitlan from the seasonal surges that could inundate the carefully constructed China palms and urban districts. But equally important was its role in freshwater preservation, creating a barrier that prevented the saltier waters of the lake's eastern sections from mixing with the precious fresh water that sustained both agriculture and urban life. The construction process itself revealed the sophisticated organizational capabilities of Aztec society. Different communities contributed specific materials based on their local resources: volcanic stone from the highland settlements, timber from the forested slopes, and specialized labor from communities with particular expertise in water management. The work proceeded in carefully planned phases, with each section of the dike completed and tested before the next began, ensuring that the lake's natural flow patterns were gradually redirected rather than suddenly disrupted. The dike's design incorporated a series of carefully engineered openings that could be opened or closed depending on seasonal conditions and water management needs. These gates, constructed with massive wooden beams and stone counterweights, required constant attention from skilled operators who understood the subtle signs of changing water levels and seasonal variations. The gentle sound of water flowing through these controlled openings became part of the lake's natural symphony, a testament to human engineering working in harmony with natural rhythms. Maintenance of this massive structure required a sophisticated understanding of both engineering principles and community organization. Each section of the dike was assigned to specific communities who took responsibility for regular inspection, repair, and seasonal reinforcement. The work was methodical and contemplative, with crews moving slowly along the structure's length, checking for signs of erosion, testing the integrity of stone joints, and ensuring that the wooden gate mechanisms remained in proper working order. The environmental impact of this massive undertaking was carefully considered by its builders, who understood that altering natural water flow patterns could have far-reaching consequences. The dike was designed to work with the lake's natural seasonal cycles, allowing for controlled flooding during the rainy season while preventing the destructive surges that could devastate agricultural areas and urban settlements. This approach reflected a philosophical understanding of engineering as stewardship rather than domination. The ultimate effectiveness of the Great Dike remained a subject of ongoing refinement and adjustment throughout its existence. Spanish chroniclers would later marvel at its scale and sophistication, comparing it favorably to the great engineering works of Europe. Yet the Mexica themselves viewed it not as a final solution, but as an ongoing dialogue with the lake's natural patterns, requiring constant attention, seasonal adjustments, and periodic major repairs. The dike's legacy extended far beyond its immediate practical functions, serving as a symbol of what could be achieved through patient cooperation between human ingenuity and natural forces. Its construction demonstrated that monumental engineering projects could be undertaken by environment, creating infrastructure that enhanced rather than disrupted the delicate balance of lake ecology. The gentle integration of this massive barrier into the lake's natural systems would serve as a model for sustainable engineering that modern practitioners are only beginning to fully appreciate. The morning light filtered through the stone arches of Tenochtitlan's great aqueducts, casting gentle shadows across the flowing water that had traveled many miles from the sacred springs of Capotoptol. This water, crystal clear and cool, represented one of humanity's most elegant solutions to the fundamental challenge of urban life: how to bring the pure essence of distant sources into the heart of a thriving city. The dual aqueduct system that served the Aztec capital stood as a testament to engineering wisdom that prioritized both reliability and harmony with natural water cycles. The construction of the first aqueduct under Moctezuma I in the mid-15th century marked a pivotal moment in Tenochtitlan's development from island settlement to imperial capital. The engineers who planned this massive undertaking understood that water was not merely a resource to be extracted, but a living force that required careful guidance and respectful management. The stone channels they carved followed the gentle contours of the landscape, allowing gravity to draw the precious liquid across miles of varied terrain with minimal disruption to the natural flow patterns that had sustained the region for millennia. The decision to construct a second parallel aqueduct demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of redundancy and maintenance that characterized Aztec engineering philosophy. This dual system ensured that when one channel required cleaning or repair, the city's water supply would continue uninterrupted. The quiet wisdom of this approach reflected a deep appreciation for the rhythms of urban life and the understanding that water, like breath itself, could not be allowed to cease flowing without threatening the very existence of the community it sustained. Within the city itself, the distribution network represented a marvel of urban planning that integrated practical necessity with social organization. The main aqueduct channels divided into progressively smaller conduits, creating a branching system that resembled the veins and arteries of a living organism. These stone-lined waterways carried their precious cargo through the heart of residential districts, where neighborhood fountains and private connections provided access according to carefully maintained social hierarchies. The daily rhythm of water distribution created its own gentle music throughout the city. The sound of flowing water provided a constant, soothing backdrop to urban life, while the specialized water carriers known as a laquais moved through the streets with their clay vessels, bringing the life-giving liquid to households and workshops. These skilled professionals occupied a respected position in Aztec society, their expertise in water quality and distribution making them essential intermediaries between the engineering marvels of the aqueduct system and the daily needs of ordinary citizens. The integration of water supply with waste management demonstrated the holistic thinking that characterized Aztec urban planning. The same channels that brought fresh water into the city were carefully designed to carry away waste products, creating a circulation system that maintained urban hygiene while minimizing environmental impact. This approach reflected an understanding of water as a continuously cycling resource, rather than a commodity to be consumed and discarded. The maintenance of these urban water systems required constant attention and specialized knowledge. Teams of skilled craftsmen regularly inspected the stone conduits, replacing worn sections and clearing blockages with tools specifically designed for working in confined aquatic spaces. The careful attention to detail in this maintenance work reflected the understanding that the city's prosperity depended entirely on the continuous flow of clean water, making these humble maintenance tasks as crucial to imperial success as the most elaborate military campaigns. The social implications of water access created complex patterns of privilege and responsibility within Tenochtitlan's urban fabric. While the basic human need for water was recognized and provided for through public fountains and communal access points, the quality and convenience of water service varied significantly according to social status. Noble households enjoyed direct connections to the main aqueduct lines, while common citizens relied on neighborhood distribution points and the services of professional water carriers. This system of differential access did not represent mere inequality, but rather reflected the Aztec understanding of water as a sacred resource that required careful stewardship and appropriate respect. The responsibilities that came with privileged access to high-quality water included obligations to support the maintenance of the overall system and to ensure that the benefits of reliable water supply contributed to the broader prosperity of the community. The gentle flow of spring water through these carefully crafted stone channels created an urban soundscape that promoted contemplation and peaceful daily rhythms. The constant, quiet murmur of moving water provided a natural counterpoint to the bustle of commercial activity, creating spaces of tranquility within the busy imperial capital. This acoustic environment reflected the Aztec appreciation for the psychological and spiritual benefits of living in harmony with water's natural rhythms. The sophisticated understanding of water quality and treatment that characterized the Aztec system extended beyond mere transportation to encompass careful attention to preservation and purification. The stone channels were designed to minimize contamination while allowing for natural filtration processes that maintained water clarity and taste. This attention to quality reflected both practical health considerations and the deeper cultural understanding of water as a sacred element deserving of respectful treatment. The gentle rhythm of wooden paddles cutting through still water created a peaceful symphony that echoed across Lake Texcoco each dawn, as countless canoes began their daily journey through the intricate network of canals that connected every corner of Tenochtitlan's remarkable aquatic civilization. These waterways, carved with patient precision through the lake's shallow waters, formed the circulatory system of an empire carrying not merely goods and people, but the very lifeblood of Mesoamerican commerce. The craft that navigated these tranquil channels represented centuries of accumulated wisdom in boat building, each vessel carefully shaped from the massive cypress trees that grew along the lake's shores. Master craftsmen would select their timber with the same reverence that a sculptor chooses marble, understanding that the grain of the wood would determine not only the canoe's strength, but its responsiveness to the subtle currents that flowed between the floating gardens. The largest of these vessels, known as acoles, could carry up to 20 passengers or equivalent cargo, their shallow draft allowing them to glide effortlessly through waters barely deep enough to submerge a man's knees. The construction of these canoes followed ancient patterns passed down through generations of skilled artisans, each step performed with meditative care. The hollowing of the trunk required weeks of patient work, using fire and stone tools to gradually shape the interior while maintaining the delicate balance between capacity and structural integrity. The finished vessels possessed an almost living quality, their smooth surfaces bearing the subtle marks of their creators' hands, each canoe unique, yet perfectly suited to its intended purpose within the greater network of aquatic transportation. Professional canoe operators known as a Q formed a distinct social class within Tenochtitlan's complex hierarchy, their expertise commanding respect and providing pathways to modest prosperity. These skilled navigators possessed an intimate knowledge of the lake's moods and seasons, understanding how wind patterns shifted throughout the day and how water levels fluctuated with the agricultural cycles. Their training began in childhood, learning to read the subtle signs that indicated safe passage through the maze of canals that connected residential districts with agricultural zones and commercial centers. The daily routine of these water-based merchants began before dawn, when the lake's surface lay mirror, still in the morning mist created an ethereal landscape of half-visible islands and floating gardens. Loading their vessels with careful precision, they arranged goods to maintain balance while maximizing cargo capacity, understanding that even a slight miscalculation could result in capsizing or damage to precious merchandise. The quiet efficiency of their movements reflected years of practice, each motion economical and purposeful as they prepared for another day of commerce on the water. The canal system itself represented a marvel of hydraulic engineering that integrated seamlessly with the natural topography of the lake. These waterways varied in width from narrow passages barely accommodating a single canoe, to broad channels capable of handling multiple vessels traveling in opposite directions. The banks were reinforced with carefully placed stones and wooden pilings, creating stable edges that prevented erosion while providing convenient mooring points for temporary stops. Strategic widening at regular intervals allowed canoes to pass each other safely, while deeper sections provided refuge during the occasional storms that swept across the lake. Navigation through this aquatic maze required not only physical skill, but also deep cultural knowledge, as certain routes carried ceremonial significance and others were reserved for specific types of commerce. The main thoroughfares connected the great market of Tlatelolco with residential districts and administrative centers, while smaller channels provided access to individual Chinapams and specialized workshops. This hierarchy of waterways reflected the social organization of Aztec society, with the broadest canals serving the needs of imperial administration and long-distance trade, while narrower passages accommodated local commerce and daily subsistence activities. The integration of water transportation with land-based routes created a flexible system that could adapt to seasonal variations and changing commercial demands. During the dry season, when water levels dropped, certain canals became impassable, requiring merchants to transfer their goods to smaller vessels or complete their journeys on foot. Conversely, the rainy season brought higher water levels that opened new passages while creating challenges in the form of stronger currents and occasional flooding. The canoe operators developed sophisticated strategies for managing these variations, maintaining detailed knowledge of alternative routes and seasonal schedules that ensured continuous commerce throughout the year. The economic advantages of this water-based transportation system extended far beyond simple convenience, providing cost-effective movement of bulk goods that would have been prohibitively expensive to transport overland. A single large canoe could carry as much cargo as dozens of human porters, while requiring only 2 or 3 skilled operators. This efficiency enabled the development of specialized agricultural production, as farmers could economically transport their harvest to distant markets, while craftsmen could access raw materials from throughout the lake region and beyond. The peaceful nature of canoe travel also facilitated cultural exchange and social interaction in ways that land-based transportation could not match. The gentle pace of water travel provided opportunities for conversation and relationship building, as merchants and passengers shared the intimate space of the canoe during journeys that might last several hours. These floating communities became centers of information exchange, where news from distant regions mingled with local gossip, creating networks of communication that paralleled the commercial relationships built through regular trade. The great market of Tenochtitlan awakened each morning with the gentle rhythm of countless canoes converging upon its stone-lined shores, their wooden hulls laden with the treasures of distant lands and the patient labor of countless hands. In the soft light of dawn, as morning mist rose from the lake's surface like incense from a temple brazier, the ancient waterways transformed into arteries of commerce that pulsed with the quiet vitality of an empire built upon water's embrace. The merchants who guided these vessels moved with the unhurried precision of those who understood, but true wealth flowed not from haste, but from the steady accumulation of trust, knowledge, and the careful cultivation of relationships that span the breadth of Mesoamerica. The integration of Tenochtitlan's water transportation systems with its commercial networks represented a profound understanding of how geography could be transformed into economic opportunity through patient engineering and social organization. The canals that carried fresh water from distant springs also carried the lifeblood of trade, creating a unified system where the same stone-lined channels that sustained daily life also enabled that would sustain imperial ambitions. This dual function reflected a sophisticated grasp of infrastructure development that modern urban planners continue to study and admire, recognizing in these ancient waterways a model of efficiency that seamlessly integrated multiple urban functions into a single, harmonious system. The professional merchants known as Aztec moved through these aquatic highways with the quiet confidence of those who had mastered both the practical arts of navigation and the subtle diplomacy required for long-distance trade. Their canoes, larger and more specialized than the simple fishing vessels used by common citizens, were carefully designed to carry maximum cargo while maintaining the shallow draft necessary for navigating the complex network of canals that connected Tenochtitlan to the broader lake system. These merchant vessels, carved from single-treat runks and reinforced with careful joinery, could carry loads of cacao beans, precious feathers, jade ornaments, and cotton textiles that would have required dozens of human porters to transport overland. The economic advantages of water-based transportation extended far beyond simple efficiency of movement. The low-impact nature of canoe travel meant that precious goods could be transported without the jarring and damage that accompanied overland portage, while the relatively smooth progress through calm waters allowed for the transport of fragile items that would have been impossible to carry safely across the rough terrain of mountain passes and jungle paths. This technological advantage enabled Tenochtitlan's merchants to specialize in high-value, delicate goods that commanded premium prices in distant markets, creating a competitive advantage that reinforced the city's position as the dominant commercial center of central Mexico. The morning arrival of trading canoes at Tenochtitlan's great market created a daily spectacle that embodied the peaceful prosperity that water engineering had made possible. Merchants from the tropical lowlands arrived with their vessels heavy with cacao beans, the precious currency that facilitated exchange throughout Mesoamerica, while highland traders brought obsidian blades whose volcanic glass edges gleamed like captured starlight in the morning sun. The careful unloading of these goods at stone quays built specifically for commercial purposes demonstrated the sophisticated planning that had gone into creating infrastructure capable of supporting large-scale commerce while maintaining the orderly flow of urban life. The integration of water transportation with market systems created opportunities for economic specialization that would have been impossible in a purely land-based trading network. Communities throughout the Valley of Mexico and beyond could focus their productive efforts on goods for which they held natural advantages, whether through access to specific raw materials, specialized craft knowledge, or favorable growing conditions, knowing that the extensive canoe networks would provide reliable access to markets where their products would find eager buyers. This specialization, in turn, increased overall productivity and created the surplus wealth that supported the complex social hierarchy and monumental architecture for which the Aztec Empire became renowned. The quiet efficiency of water-based commerce also enabled the development of credit systems and long-term trading relationships that formed the foundation of Mesoamerican economic integration. Merchants who could reliably transport goods across vast distances without the delays and uncertainties of overland travel could make commitments to future deliveries with confidence, creating the predictability that allowed for sophisticated financial arrangements. The seasonal rhythms of water transport, synchronized with agricultural cycles and religious festivals, created a temporal framework within which commercial relationships could develop and flourish across generations of trading families. As evening approached and the great market began to quiet, the departure of satisfied merchants in their laden canoes represented more than simple commercial success. It embodied the peaceful integration of human ingenuity with natural systems that had made Tenochtitlan's prosperity possible. The gentle splash of paddles moving through calm water carried with it the accumulated wisdom of generations who had learned to work with rather than against the rhythms of lake and season, creating an economic system whose sustainability would endure until external forces brought dramatic change to the Valley of Mexico. The gentle rhythm of paddles cutting through morning water carried more than canoes across the vast expanse of Lake Texcoco. It carried the dreams and aspirations of an empire reaching far beyond its aquatic borders. As dawn broke over Tenochtitlan's stone causeways, the departure of trading expeditions marked the beginning of journeys that would weave the island city into the broader tapestry of Mesoamerican civilization, creating networks of exchange that stretched from the tropical lowlands of the Maya to the highland valleys of distant mountain peoples. The professional merchants known as Poc occupied a unique position in Aztec society, their status elevated by the dangerous and essential nature of their work. These skilled traders departed from Tenochtitlan's canals with ceremonial blessings, their canoes loaded with the precious products of the lake city's workshops and gardens. The obsidian blades crafted by master artisans, the delicate feather work that adorned noble garments, and the surplus maize from the floating gardens all found their way into the carefully balanced cargo holds of these aquatic ambassadors. The integration of water-based transportation with overland trade routes created a seamless network that maximized the efficiency of long-distance commerce. Merchants could load their heavy goods onto large canoes for the initial journey across the lake, then transfer to smaller vessels for navigation through the canal systems that connected to rivers flowing toward distant regions. This multimodal approach to transportation reflected a sophisticated understanding of logistics that minimized costs while maximizing the range of accessible markets. The cultural exchange facilitated by these commercial networks flowed as steadily as the waters that carried the trading canoes. Merchants returning from the tropical regions brought not only exotic products like cacao, jade, and colorful feathers, but also new ideas about agricultural techniques, artistic styles, and religious practices. The quiet conversations conducted in the shadow of Tenochtitlan's Great Pyramids included discussions of distant customs and innovations, creating a cosmopolitan atmosphere that enriched the cultural life of the imperial capital. The diplomatic dimensions of long-distance trade added layers of complexity to what might otherwise have been simple commercial transactions. Merchants often served as unofficial ambassadors, carrying messages between rulers and gathering intelligence about the political situations in distant regions. The careful balance between economic opportunity and political risk required merchants to develop sophisticated skills in negotiation and cultural sensitivity, making them valuable intermediaries in the complex web of Mesoamerican international relations. The seasonal rhythms of trade reflected the natural cycles that govern life throughout the region. During the dry season, when travel was easier and rivers more predictable, the great trading expeditions would depart from Tenochtitlan's harbors with their holds full of manufactured goods and agricultural surplus. The timing of these journeys coordinated with the agricultural cycles of distant communities, ensuring that merchants arrived when local populations had surplus products to exchange in the leisure time to engage in extended negotiations. The environmental impact of this intensified commercial activity created both opportunities and challenges for the communities involved in the trade networks. The demand for exotic products stimulated increased production in specialized regions, leading to innovations in agricultural techniques and craft production. However, this intensification also placed pressure on local ecosystems, requiring careful management to maintain the sustainability of resource extraction over the long term. The integration of tribute collection with commercial networks created a complex system where economic relationships intertwined with political obligations. Communities that fell under Aztec influence found themselves incorporated into trade networks that brought both opportunities and responsibilities. The flow of tribute goods toward Tenochtitlan followed many of the same routes used by independent merchants, creating efficiencies that benefited all participants while reinforcing the political relationships that sustained the empire. The ultimate vulnerability of these extensive trade networks to external disruption became tragically apparent with the arrival of Spanish conquistadors. The same water-based transportation systems that had enabled Tenochtitlan's commercial expansion also provided avenues for military conquest, as Spanish forces learned canal systems that had once protected the island city. The collapse of the traditional trade networks marked not only the end of Aztec political power, but also the disruption of economic relationships that had sustained communities throughout Mesoamerica for generations. The legacy of Tenochtitlan's commercial networks continues to influence our understanding of pre-Columbian economic complexity and the sophisticated integration of transportation technology with cultural exchange. The quiet wisdom of merchants who understood that successful trade required respect for local customs and environmental limitations offers timeless lessons about the importance of sustainable commercial relationships in our interconnected world. As we reach the gentle conclusion of our journey through Tenochtitlan's remarkable water, engineering, and trade networks, we find ourselves drawn into a profound understanding of how human ingenuity can flow in perfect harmony with nature's rhythms. The sophisticated hydraulic systems we have explored reveal not merely technological achievement, but a deeper wisdom about living peacefully within the embrace of aquatic environments. The quiet legacy of the Mexica engineers continues to whisper through the ages, their patient understanding of water's dual nature as both blessing and challenge, offering timeless lessons for our contemporary world. Their china palms still float like green dreams in the morning mist. Their canals still carry the gentle echoes of countless trading expeditions. Their great dike still stands as testament to the power of community working in thoughtful harmony with natural forces. As we settle into peaceful reflection, we can almost hear the soft lapping of Lake Texcoco's waters against those carefully constructed stone foundations, the rhythmic sound of paddles moving through calm morning waters, the gentle flow of spring water through ancient aqueducts. These sounds blend into a soothing symphony of human adaptation, each note representing centuries of patient observation, careful planning, and respectful integration with the natural world. The merchants who once loaded their precious goods onto reed boats in the pre-dawned darkness understood something profound about the relationship between water and prosperity. Their quiet movements through narrow canals between floating gardens created ripples that spread far beyond the Valley of Mexico, carrying not just trade goods but cultural wisdom, technological innovation, and the peaceful philosophy of living with rather than conquering the aquatic environment. Let your mind drift now, like those ancient canoes, floating gently through the interconnected waterways of understanding. Feel the steady rhythm of progress that comes not from force but from patient adaptation, the kind of wisdom that built great civilizations by working in harmony with water's eternal cycles. The Aztec engineers knew that true strength comes from flexibility, that lasting prosperity flows from sustainable practices, that the greatest achievements arise from quiet cooperation with natural systems. As the evening mist begins to rise from these ancient waters, carrying with it the accumulated wisdom of centuries, we find ourselves enveloped in the peaceful understanding that human civilization at its finest represents not conquest but collaboration, not domination but gentle partnership with the forces that sustain all life. The water continues to flow, as it has for millennia, carrying with it the timeless lessons of those who learned to build their dreams upon its ever-changing surface. Rest now in this profound peace, letting the gentle sound of flowing water carry you into the deepest tranquility, where the wisdom of ancient engineers merges with the eternal rhythm of waves lapping softly against the shores of understanding, where every breath brings you closer to the serene harmony that flows through all sustainable human achievement, peaceful and eternal as the waters themselves.